From Anshei Sphard-Beth Emeth congregation, it's time to take 10 minutes for Torah with Rabbi Joel Finkelstein.
Welcome to our discussion of Tiny Esther Uncovered. What is the meaning of Tiny Esther? When should we commemorate it this year when it falls on Shabbos? And what is it really all about? The whole idea of Tiny Esther is a big question. How can you have Tiny Esther? How can you have a fast the day before Purim? The day before Purim and the day after Purim are holidays. The Gemara says that this Purim and Hanukkah are part of a very special list of holidays from the Second Temple period. And the day before them and the day after them, you should not fast. But you'll say, well, but Megillas Tainis, that whole list of Second Temple holidays, it was canceled. Yes, but Hanukkah and Purim are not canceled. Hanukkah and Purim are still special holidays, and they should be forbidden to fast the day before and the day after. So there are two approaches. One says, once that book, the Megillat Tanya, the day of special holidays from the Second Temple period, was canceled, then we could indeed fast on the day before or the day after. Only the day Purim itself is preserved. The day before, you're allowed to fast. Others say, no, the day before is also forbidden, but that day used to be a holiday, and that day was canceled. It used to be Yom Nikanor. It was a special commemoration in those days. Also, we could say that the day before was always a fast day, even in the olden days when they were not allowed to fast the day before all the different holidays of the Second Temple period, like Hanukkah, but they could fast the day before Purim because it was Zman Kehila Kol. Rabbi Tam, one of the Balei Tosfot, Rashi's grandson, says that this was a day when the Jews gathered. You see, Purim is a commemoration of resting from the defense of ourselves. We defended ourselves on the 13th, on Tiny Esther, and then we rested on the 14th, that's Purim. So, the day we fasted, the day we won the war, we fought the war, surely Jews all over the world were fasting to make sure we would win. So therefore, forevermore, it was a day of fasting. So that day is an ancient day. It's not just a regular holiday on which you're forbidden to fast the day before, but rather it's a special holiday on which the day before was an ancient fast going back a long time. Now, the Masechet Sofrim, the tractate written in the land of Israel after the Talmud, has a whole different view. It says you should fast for 3 days after Purim. Usually we don't commemorate Purim after Purim, but they would fast 3 days, Monday, Thursday, Monday, after Purim, because we want to remember the 3 days that Esther fasted. Now, Esther fasted on Pesach time, but we can't fast on Pesach, it's not right, so we fast 3 days during Adar, during this month of Purim. So we really have two different theories as to what this fast is all about. Is it to remember the 3 days that Esther fasted? Or is it to remember the fact that Jews were fasting as a way of praying and supporting their brethren who were fighting against the Amalekites and the Haman warriors and supporters? So, is it to remember Esther? Is it to remember the fight? In other words, does it commemorate the beginning of the Purim story, where Esther was praying so that she could approach Achashverosh to begin with? Or does it commemorate the end of the Purim story, that we were fighting, we were victorious, but we were praying that we would be victorious? Two different views. Now, let's say you're a Shushan Purim person. Let's say you live in Jerusalem or a walled city, and you keep the second day of Purim. So shouldn't you fast on the day before that Purim, on everybody else's Purim? Well, firstly, we don't fast on Purim, but secondly, as we said, it is Zman Kehila Kol. The Miri explains that it's a fast day for all. And therefore, even for those who have Shushan Purim, the fast of Esther is 2 days before, on the eve of the regular Purim, not the Shushan Purim, the day after Purim. Now, the question is, this year, what do we do? We have the fast that falls the day before Purim, and usually the day before Purim, you would fast. But this year, the day before Purim is Shabbos. So we can't fast on Shabbos, so maybe we should fast on Friday. Well, then you have a basic question. How can you move a sad day up? Usually if Tisha B'Av falls on Shabbos, you move it to Sunday. You push it forward. Why do we move it back? Well, there are several answers you could give. We don't want to do anything about Purim, as we said, after Purim. Everything about Purim needs to take place before Purim. After that is all Pesach time. The day after Purim, we get worried about Pesach. Start buying things for Pesach. The second answer is that, of course, we can't push it up, then you'll bump into Purim. You don't want to fast on Shushan Purim. And the third answer given by the Meiri is that this day is not a sad day at all. We don't move up Tisha B'Av because you don't want to have something sad earlier. You want to push it off till later. But Taanis Esther is not sad at all. Especially, as we said, to commemorate the gathering and the victory of the Jews, and the Jews were praying. Nothing sad about that at all. It's not a mourning type of fast where mourning. You're not mourning for something. It's rather a fast of joy. He doesn't use the word joy. The Chashuki Chemet, Rabbi Zilberstein uses the word of joy. But much earlier, the Sefer HaMichtam says it's aschalta de simcha. It's the beginning of the joy. There's a Talmudic concept of aschalta de gula, the beginning of redemption. Purim is the beginning of the joy. It's the beginning of the joy of Simcha, of Purim, to remember that we fasted when we fought, and then we won, and then we celebrated. The Orchos Chaim takes it a step further and says a beautiful thing. Also a rabbi in Provence, he says, HaKadosh Baruch Hu ro'eh v'shomea. You know what Taanis Esther is? And this is the key. Taanis Esther is the day when we realize that God hears us, and He sees our affliction, and He answered our prayers. What a beautiful thing. Purim, Taanis Esther is a day we remember that God hears our prayers. Perhaps that's what all of Purim is about, but also it starts on Taanis Esther as well. Now the Rambam has a totally different view. The Rambam says, no, this is the fast. They fasted in the days of Haman. Sounds more like Esthers Fast. He said, he also quotes the verse, Divrei Tzomot v'Dakatam, that Mordechai instituted not only Purim, but also days of fasting. So it's not clear exactly what the Rambam holds, but perhaps he takes the view that it's the commemoration of Esther's fasting, the Jewish community's fasting. Now in the land of Israel, they used to follow the Masechet Tzorvim. They would fast the 3 days after Purim. Now we're very lenient about this Taanis Esther. If someone has a headache, they can just skip it. You say, look, it's not. Some say it was instituted in the Gaonic period, in the later period. So if you have a headache, you can skip this fast. As opposed to another fast, if you have a headache on Shabbat or Tammuz, you have to grin and bear it. However, the Jews of Kurdistan and Persia, because of various historical things in their community, they were actually very strict. They said, this is a very strict fast. If you have a headache, you've got to continue. They took a very strict view, and some actually fasted 3 days. Even to this day, Jews of Kurdistan, some Persian Jews, Iranian Jews. There was a big fight once between the Jews of Provence, southern France, represented by the Meiri, and the Jews of the students of Spain, the students of the Ramban, who came to live in Provence. And in the book Magei Avos, where the Meiri defends his position, he says, on a year like this, when Purim falls on Saturday night, you should fast on Friday. He says, well, then you're going to start, what do you mean? You start Shabbos a few minutes early, you start Shabbos with sundown, and then what are you going to do? Are you going to fast all the way through after Shabbos starts? He says, no, you just fast until Shabbos starts, but not any further than that. Finally, what is this day all about? We mentioned one idea, that it's about remembering that God hears our prayers. The Tzafnas Paneach, a Hasidic writer, he says that we have to get rid of Amalek. The day before Purim is about getting rid of Amalek, getting rid of the Yetzer Hara, the evil things, so that we can really rejoice and enjoy this day. The Toldos Yaakov Yosef, a great Hasidic early writer, he says, what are we commemorating? What are we fasting for? I mean, Haman is gone. We won. The battle's over. But he says, in every generation, we need to continue to fight Amalek. And that's why we continue to fast. It's as if the war is not over. We got to keep fasting. Now we know that all the fasts that we fast, Tisha B'Av and the like, one day they'll become great holidays of joy. This is an example of that, where it was a great day of worry, and it became a day, as we said, a day of the beginning of joy. Finally, the Tiferet Shlomo, the Radomsker Rebbe, says that you know what the fast of Esther, the tiniest Esther, you know what it's all about? It's a symbol that everything can turn around. After all, we were fasting, we were so worried. Esther was so worried. The Jews, as they were fighting to defend themselves, were so worried. And yet it all turned out beautifully. It all turned around in one day. Went from days of worry to days of celebration. And so too in our times. We hope and pray that we can go from sorrow to joy. This time we're seeing all kinds of anti-Semitic acts, all kinds of problems for the Jewish community. We know that one day things can turn around from sadness to joy, from sorrow to gladness, and from great darkness to great light. Thank you for joining us here at the Anshei Sphard-Beth Emeth congregation to discuss Tanit Esther, the fast of Esther. Join us each week to discuss the various holidays and Parsha. We wish everyone a happy Purim.
This has been 10 Minutes for Torah with Rabbi Joel Finkelstein. To learn more, visit asb.org.